My name is Bassett. I will be your narrator, the one that tells you into the darkness. Here, I reveal tales that may keep you restless at night, tales you can even share with me at my email mentioned in the description. So switch off the lamps, put on your earphones, and let's commence our tale. This tale is shared from our audience, they whisper. In the heart of the hills lies a place called Poonpur Village. From a distance, it looks breathtaking. Green fields, tall trees, and smiling villagers. But hidden beneath this beauty is a secret that chills the blood. At the edge of the villages stands an abandoned mansion. A grand structure once full of life, now left to rot and decay. Its walls cracked and broken. Its windows dark and hollow. The people of Poonpur refuse to go near it. Why? Because for decades they say the mansion has been cursed. Strange lights are seen flickering at night. Whispers echo in the silence. And sometimes a shadowy figure of an old woman is spotted standing at the gate, watching, waiting. Children are warned never to wander close. Travelers who pass by walk faster, their eyes fixed on the ground. The mansion has become a place where fear itself lives and breathes. No one knows what truly happened there, but one thing is certain: the people of Poonpur carry this secret like a burden, and soon that secret is about to be uncovered. Our music rises, transition to next chapter, or thunder sound, rain pouring in the background. It was a stormy night. Dark clouds swallowed the sky, and heavy rain crashed against the ground. Two boys travelers on their way home found themselves lost in the middle of this storm. The road ahead was muddy, slippery, and the forest around them grew darker with every step. Lightning flashed. For a brief moment, they saw the silhouette of a mansion towering in the distance. The very mansion the villagers of Poonpur never dared to enter. The boys hesitated, but the storm was merciless. Soaking wet, shivering in the cold, they decided to take shelter inside that forbidden place. Ear door creaked slowly. The wooden gates groaned as they pushed them open. Inside, the air was thick and damp, and carried the smell of rotten dust. Broken furniture lay scattered. Cobwebs hung like curtains. The silence was so heavy, they could hear their own hearts beating. Suddenly a chill swept through the hallway. The boys froze. In the corner of the room stood a figure. It was a woman. Her hair long, white, and tangled. Her skin wrinkled, pale, almost falling off the bone. And her eyes black, hollow voids staring directly at them. One of the boys whispered, "Did you see that?" But before the other could answer, the woman moved, not walking, not running, but gliding across the floor. Her hands stretched out, her nails long and sharp like claws. The boys panicked. They stumbled backward, their flashlights shaking in trembling hands. The old woman let out a shriek so piercing, so inhuman, that it echoed through every broken wall of the mansion. The boys ran, their footsteps echoing down the hall. But the sound of something crawling behind them followed closely. That night, they realized that the storm outside was nothing compared to the storm of terror waiting inside the mansion. The music builds, fade to silence. Air soft, ominous music begins, slow heartbeat sound. The storm had passive, but whispers of that night spread quickly through Poonpur Village. The mansion once again became the center of fear. But then a new twist arrived. One morning a car stopped outside the old gates. From it stepped a couple and two men who claimed to be their brothers. The villagers gathered, their eyes filled with suspicion. The strangers spoke with pride. "This mansion belongs to our ancestors. We have come to take it back and make it ours again." The gasps filled the air. The people of Poonpur could hardly believe it. Someone actually wanted to live in that cursed place. The couple smiled politely, but there was something unsettling about their presence. Their eyes wandered the mansion greedily, as if they had been waiting for this moment. The villagers warned them. They spoke of the shadows, the cries, the woman who appears at night. But the strangers only laughed. "Ghosts, spirits. These are just stories you villagers believe. We fear nothing." That evening the gates opened once again. The strangers stepped inside, their footsteps echoing across the broken floors. The mansion seemed to groan in protest, as if the walls themselves knew they did not belong there. Candles were lit. Furniture was dusted. The couple walked through the halls, touching every corner, whispering to each other about the riches they would uncover. But the villagers stood at a distance, watching in silence. Their hearts heavy, because they knew the mansion accepts no one. As the sun set, the air around the mansion grew heavier. Shadows deepened. Windows rattled. And far in the corner, the faint figure of an old woman was once again seen standing still. The strangers had arrived. But what they didn't know was that by entering the mansion, they had already sealed their fate. Music swells fade out with echoing footsteps. Low drums beating, wind howling softly in the background. The next morning the strangers walked proudly into the village square. They spoke of how the mansion would soon be restored, how it would once again shine with life. But the villagers did not celebrate. Instead, their faces grew pale, their eyes filled with fear. An elder stepped forward. His voice was shaky yet firm. "You don't understand what you've done. That mansion is not yours to claim. It belongs to her, the one who never left." The strangers frowned. "Who are you talking about?" Whispers spread through the crowd. And then the stories began. For years people have seen her. A frail, old woman standing by the gates. Sometimes sitting in the broken windows. Her eyes black as the night. Her presence a heavy as a curse. Travelers who passed by spoke of footsteps in the dark. Children claimed to hear lullabies sung in a cracked, haunting voice. And once a farmer swore he saw her crawling across the ground, like an insect, her hair sweeping the earth. The elder's eyes filled with sorrow. That mansion is not empty, it is guarded. And those who disturb it never return the same. The couple exchanged nervous glances, but their brothers laughed loudly. "These are just stories to scare us. We don't believe in your superstitions." The villagers fell silent. They knew their warning had been ignored. As the sun dipped lower, a strange chill spread through the air. Birds that usually filled the sky disappeared. The forest grew still, unnaturally still. The elder whispered once more, "You can deny the stories, but you cannot escape her." That night the mansion's new guests would learn that every warning carries truth. Our music builds into a sharp sting, fade to silence. Our low rumble, slow heartbeat sound rising in the background. The villagers reluctantly followed the strangers back to the dreaded mansion. Their footsteps echoed against the broken walls. Inside the air was heavy. The smell of damp wood and something older, something rotten. The brothers searched eagerly. They pulled aside broken furniture, knocked on the walls, and scraped the floor with sticks. Hours passed. The villagers watched nervously. Nothing was found, and then a young boy shouted from the courtyard, "Here, over here." Everyone rushed. Beneath a collapsed section of the wall, a strange stone was uncovered. Unlike the rest of the foundation, this one was carved natural. The men worked together, heaving the stone aside. And there, hidden for decades, was a stairway descending into darkness. Our music deepens, metallic scraping sound. With shaking hands they lit their torches. One by one they entered. The air below was suffocating, thick with dust, alive with cobwebs. Every step echoed like thunder. At the bottom they found a small chamber, its walls damp, its ceiling dripping. And there at the far end rested an iron chest, old, rusted, yet untouched by time. The strangers' eyes glittered. "The treasure," they whispered. With trembling fingers, they dragged the chest into the light. The old woman, who had been watching from above, suddenly began to wail. Her cry was inhuman, echoing through every corner. "My treasure, my treasure!" The villagers froze. The strangers forced the chest open, and then silence. Inside it was not gold, not jewels, but the tiny skeleton of a child. A sharp musical sting echoing silence, and gasps filled the chamber. The villagers stepped back in horror. The old woman's cries grew louder. Her hands reached out, trembling, desperate. Give her back, she is mine, my treasure, my daughter. The mansion's true secret was no longer hidden. And music fades slow, haunting lullaby begins, as in soft, eerie music, a slow, unsettling violin strings. The villagers stood frozen. The chest lay open, the tiny skeleton staring back at them. And in that silence the old woman spoke. Her voice cracked, each word trembling with pain. You want to know who I am? Her eyes glowed in the dim light, her hair white and wild, her face carved with sorrow. I am Gauri. Once I was like you. A wife, a daughter, in law of a mother. But the villagers exchanged shocked glances. They had heard the name long ago, buried in whispers. Gauri continued, her frail hands shaking, pointing at the chest. That is my daughter, my only child. Gasps echoed. The strangers stepped back uneasily. Gauri's story spilled out, like poison from an old wound. She told them of her youth, her joy when her baby was born. But when she gave birth to a girl, her happiness turned to ashes. Her husband, her father, in law, they cursed her. They wanted a son and heir. Her voice grew bitter. Her laughter cracked into sobs. They told me my daughter was a curse. They told me she must be sacrificed for the family to get a boy. But the villagers murmured in disbelief. The strangers grew restless. Gauri's eyes burned with madness. They tricked me, they killed her right here in this mansion. She clutched the chest. Her nails scraped the rust. Her tears fell onto the tiny bones. Since that night I have stayed here, guarding her, protecting her. My daughter, my treasure, my only world. Her words echoed through the hall. The villagers bowed their heads. The strangers shifted nervously. For now they understood. The ghostly figure, the whispers at night, the fear that haunted the mansion, it was not a curse. It was a mother's grief. A grief that never died. Our music swells, then fades into silence. Our deep ominous drums, whispering wind sound effect on. The villagers stood in silence. Gauri's story had only begun. Her eyes turned hollow, her voice sharp as a blade. You want the truth? Then listen. She pointed to the cracked walls. Her words painted horrors upon them. The night my daughter was born, my husband spat in disgust. My father-in-law called her a curse. They wanted a son, a boy to carry the family name. Her trembling fingers gripped her hair. They went to a tantric, a black magician. He gave them a ritual drenched in blood. The villagers shivered. The strangers exchanged fearful glances. Gauri's voice grew darker. The tantric said, sacrifice the girl. Offer her life to the fire. From her ashes a son will be born. She screamed the words, as if reliving the horror. Her chest heaved. Her tears fell, but she did not stop. And that night, in this very basement, they killed her. A gasp tore through the crowd. Even the strangers stepped back. Gauri fell to her knees, her hands clawing at the floor. My little one cried. Her tiny hands reached for me, but they slit her throat and threw her into the fire. The room shook with her sobs. Her wails echoed like thunder. I begged them, I screamed, but they laughed. They said her blood would bring them a son. She stared at the skeleton, her voice dropped almost a whisper. But no son ever came, only death, only curses. The villagers shivered. The strangers could barely breathe. The truth was darker than any ghost story. It wasn't just a mansion of fear. It was a house of sin. A house where innocence was murdered for greed. And from that night onward, the mansion carried not a blessing, but a mother's eternal curse. Music swells with heavy chants fades to silence. Our low humming sound heartbeat, like drum in the background. Gauri's cries shook the mansion. Her pain had now turned to rage. Her voice cut through the silence. That night they killed my daughter, but they also killed the woman I was. What rose from her ashes was a mother's fury. Her eyes burned with madness. Her hands trembled as if still stained with blood. I saw her body lying lifeless. Her tiny face frozen in fear. Something inside me snapped. The villagers clutched each other. The strangers stood pale. Gauri's voice grew heavy like thunder. I picked up the same knifey, the knife they used to kill her, and I swore they would pay. Her hand slashed the air, reenacting the carnage. My husband, I cut his throat in one stroke. My father-in-law, I stabbed him until he stopped screaming. The servants, they begged for mercy, but I gave them none. They watched my daughter die, so they too had to die. Her words were fire. Each syllable burned into the walls. The villagers gasped. Some even turned away in fear. But Gauri wasn't finished. Their blood painted these walls. Their screams became this mansion's voice. From that day, this Haveli was cursed. She clutched the chest tightly, rocking back and forth. I held my daughter's bones as the only treasure I had left, and in that madness I chose to stay. Her eyes widened. Her voice dropped to a chilling whisper. Since then, no one leaves this mansion without fear. Because I am here, still waiting, still watching, still guarding my treasure. Her laughter cracked the silence. A sound not human, but beastly. The villagers trembled. The strangers shivered. They now understood. This was not just a ghost. This was a mother's vengeance. And vengeance never dies. Her music rises. Sharp violins screech, then fades. Iron wind howls outside, a faint whispering in the dark. The strangers had heard enough. But instead of fear, greed filled their eyes. The eldest brother smirked. This chest, it's worth more than this entire village. We'll take it, sell it, and be rich forever. But the wife nodded coldly, her voice sharp like poison. Why waste such treasure on the dead? The villagers gasped. They begged them to stop. Do not touch it. It belongs to the spirit, to Gauri. But the outsiders laughed. They pushed past the crowd. The eldest reached for the chest, the iron creak of the sound piercing like a scream. Suddenly, the mansion shuddered. Doors slammed shut, windows rattled like bones. The youngest brother cried out, "Something's wrong. This place, it's alive." But it was too late. The floor beneath them cracked. A hidden trap opened wide. He plunged into darkness, his scream echoing forever. The wife stumbled backward, her eyes wide in terror. From the shadows, chains rattled. Rusty hooks shot out from the walls. They wrapped around her arms, dragging her into the dark. Her shrieks filled the mansion. Then, silence. The eldest stood frozen, his hands still on the chest. Behind him a figure appeared. It was Gauri, her eyes glowing, her laughter echoing. You wanted treasure. Then pay the price. The chest burst open, not with gold but with fire. A blast of cursed flames engulfed him. His cries shook the walls. His body turned to ash. The villagers screamed in horror. The survivors fled to the corners. The mansion roared with life, its walls oozing blood, its doors breathing like lungs. The outsiders had awakened it. Their greed had sealed their fate. And once again the mansion fed on souls. Her sharp metallic clang echoes fade to silence. A low hum, the sound of a heartbeat in the dark. The villagers stood trembling. The outsiders were gone. Only ashes and silence remained. But questions lingered. Who were they? Why had they come? The village headman stepped forward, his face pale, his voice heavy. They were not hares. They were liars. Frauds. He held up a set of documents, torn, burnt at the edges, yet still readable. Deeds to the mansion, signatures forged, names stolen. The truth was out. The couple and their brothers had planned to claim the mansion, not as family but as thieves. They wanted to sell it, to profit from cursed land soaked in blood and sorrow. One of the elders whispered, "They came for gold, but met the spirit." The villagers nodded, fear turning into rage. How dare outsiders treat their pain like business? How dare they disturb Gauri's grief? The mansion groaned again, its walls pulsing. As if agreeing with their anger, the chest still lay open, the child's tiny skeleton inside, untouched, sacred. The villagers bowed their heads, tears streaming silently. The headman raised his hand. No more lies. No more greed. This place is not for sale. It is a grave, and we will honor it. But the villagers lit lamps. One by one they placed them at the mansion's gates. A wall of light against the darkness. The truth had been exposed. The outsiders' greed destroyed them, and the mansion remained in the hands of those who understood its curse. But even then, the old woman's shadow still lingered, watching, waiting. Her story was not yet over. Her music swells, whispering voices fade into silence. Our soft, eerie lullaby in the background slowly turning distorted. The night was still. But inside the mansion, a presence stirred. The villagers watched in silence. The iron chest lay open, the child's fragile remains bathed in moonlight. And then she appeared, the old woman, bent, shaking, her eyes pools of endless grief. Her hands trembled as she reached into the chest, lifting the tiny bones, cradling them as if the child still breathed. Her voice cracked. Mary Beatty, Mary Daulat, Mary Zindagi. My daughter, my treasure, my lifa. Her wails echoed through the hall, not of rage this time, but of pain. Raw. When ending, she rocked the skeleton gently, singing a broken lullaby, the same song she once sang to her baby girl. The villagers could not move. Tears burned their eyes. This was not a demon before them. This was a mother who had lost everything. Her husband's betrayal, her family's cruelty, her child stolen in blood sacrifice. Her heart shattered, and yet her love endured. She clung to the bones, kissing the tiny skull, whispering to it, Tu Haito Mary Daulat Hay, Mary Choti Rani. You are my treasure, my little queen. Her grief shook the very walls. Doors slammed, windows shattered. The mansion screamed with her. The villagers fell to their knees. They could not fight her. They could only witness her agony. Her shadow loomed large. Her cries pierced the night. Every corner of the mansion dripped with sorrow. And then, as suddenly as she appeared, she vanished. Only the chest remained, and the girl's remains still glowing faintly. The villagers whispered, She does not haunt for revenge. She haunts for love. But love this deep can be as terrifying as hatred. Low music fades, a child's laugh echoes once, then silence in her soft temple bells ringing a calm yet heavy atmosphere. The first rays of dawn touched Poonpur Village. The mansion stood silent. For the first time in years, the men, women, children, all holding lamps, their faces solemn. At the center of the courtyard the iron chest lay, inside the remains of a child, so fragile, so sacred. The head priest stepped forward, his voice steady, his eyes filled with compassion. No more hiding. No more darkness. This soul must find peace. The villagers prepared a pyre. They placed fresh flowers. They lit incense sticks. The air filled with the scent of sandalwood and prayers. Slowly, with trembling hands, they lifted the child's remains, wrapped gently in white cloth, covered with garlands, as if dressing a goddess. The priest chanted mantras. Voices of the villagers joined him. A river of prayer flowed through the mansion's cursed walls. The fire was lit. Its flames danced. Its warmth spread. The skeleton was placed upon the pyre. Tears streamed down faces. The old lullaby echoed faintly in the wind. The villagers bowed their heads, their hands folded, their lips whispered, Forgive us. Forgive our silence. May you finally rest. The fire grew, bright, pure, holy. For the first time the mansion did not shake. It sighed as if relieved, as if free. And in that moment the shadow of the old woman appeared, standing by the flames, her face calm, her eyes no longer black, but filled with peace. She smiled faintly, one last time, and then she faded into the light. The curse was lifted, the soul redeemed, and Poonpur finally breathed again. Music rises, a divine chore fades into silence. Our soft, hopeful music, sound of birds at dawn. Days passed. The mansion of Poonpur no longer felt haunted. Its walls, once heavy with screams, now echoed with silence. A silence of peace. But the villagers knew they could not leave it abandoned. Not again. The headman gathered everyone. He spoke firmly, yet with kindness. This house took so many lives. Let it now give life back. Let it be a place of light, not darkness. The villagers agreed. Brick by brick they cleaned the mansion, cobwebs were cleared. Broken doors were mended, paint was laid fresh. The cursed walls turned into shining ones. Soon a new signboard was hung at the gate. Gauri Kanya Vidyalaya, a school for every daughter of the village. The first morning, girls walked in. Their hair tied neatly, books in their arms, smiles on their faces. The courtyard, once filled with fear, now rang with laughter, with poems, with prayers, with the joy of learning. Teachers arrived. Blackboards were set up. Classrooms filled with hope. The sound of pencils scratching paper replaced the sound of screams. And every evening, as the sun dipped low, the villagers lit a lamp at the entrance. A lamp for Gauri. A mother. A protector. They believed her spirit still watched. Not as a curse, not as a shadow, but as a guardian smiling at the little girls, her girls. Generations passed. But the story of the mansion was never forgotten. Parents whispered it to their children, not as a tale of horror, but as a lesson. A mother's love is eternal. It cannot be destroyed. It cannot be buried. And so, Poonpur's darkest curse gave birth to its brightest blessing. The mansion lived again, not as a haunted ruin, but as a temple of knowledge, a sanctuary for daughters, a beacon of hope, the beginning of a new dawn. Her music swells, fades out into silence.